Minnesota's budget surplus is expected to shrink with economic uncertainty. State budget officials forecast a surplus of $456 million for the next two-year budget cycle. That's $160 million lower than an estimate in November. It gets worse for the following year, 2 years, with its forecast deficit of $6 billion. Next week, I'll be interviewing next week I'll be interviewing DFL Speaker Melissa Hortman. Earlier this morning, I spoke with House Speaker Lisa Demuth. Joining us right now is the House Speaker, Lisa Demuth. Thank you so much for coming on.
Good morning, Esme. Good to see you.
All right. I want to first say congratulations on being named USA Woman of the Year for Minnesota.
Thank you very much. It's quite an honor, quite humbling, but very much an honor.
I want to ask you about this looming budget deficit. What was clear in the news conference on Thursday is that both sides were saying, the Dems were basically saying, it's President Trump's fault. You were saying, hey, it's their fault. It's the governor's fault, the legislature's fault. Are you guys going to be able to agree on a budget? Because you have to agree on a budget, otherwise the state will shut down on July 1st.
I'll answer that in two different ways. The first part with the information that we received on Thursday with the looming budget deficit. This was the budget forecast that will inform all of the future work that we do during this legislative year. And this is something, knowing that the budget deficit has increased since the November forecast, was very concerning. It's something that we had been talking about because of out of control spending of an $18 billion surplus, increasing all of our taxes and fees to feed the state budget in a very expansive way over the last 2 years. We were concerned that it wasn't going to be sustainable with the spending that took place over 2 years. In November, we had a looming $5 billion deficit. And now with these numbers, we know it's over $6 billion just in a few short months. It is very concerning. Esme, I'll answer the other part of your question. Are we going to be able to balance a budget and work together, Democrats and Republicans? My answer to that is yes. That is expected. That is a job that constituents and voters have sent us to St. Paul to do. And I believe we can both do that in a way that does not increase taxes on Minnesotans. That is off the table. Okay. We have already increased taxes in Minnesotans way too much over the last 2 years. We also know that we need to get this work done by May 19th. That is the deadline
and you can do
to
that.
Get everything done.
You're confident you can do that? No special session, no government shutdown?
I really believe that we can get this work done. It's going to be less spending, clearly, because we don't have the money. But this will give us the opportunity to focus on what is actually needed for Minnesotans and get rid of the extra heavily partisan things that a lot of times are seen. I believe we can get that work done on time and not have to go into a special session.
All right. 14 Republican lawmakers wrote the U.S. House Republican members from Minnesota saying, please don't cut Medicaid. The consequences on Minnesota would be devastating. Would you sign on to that letter, and do you agree with those legislators?
I think what the legislators did with sending letters to Washington, to the congressional delegation there, was just to point out the fact that there are concerns going forward with serving the most vulnerable here in the state of Minnesota. We know with this looming budget deficit that any changes could be more impactful. But I think the more important thing to look at is the fact that over the last 2 years, we had that $18 billion surplus. We could have been saving and investing in Minnesota in a way that wouldn't have us under a looming deficit. And the looming deficit that we have is at a state level prior to the new administration in D.C. even taking office. And so, yes, the letter went out, but we're more concerned at a state level right now before any federal cuts even would hit. We're still at a $6 billion deficit.
I want to ask about your political future. You certainly are the leading Republican statewide. A lot of people say they'd like to see Lisa Demuth run for either Senate or governor.
Well, what I can tell you with
either of those?
I can tell you that I don't plan to run for U.S. Senate. There is no way that I would be doing that. And so my focus right now, Esme, is on getting this budget balanced. We have a special election on Tuesday in Roseville that will determine what the true makeup is going to be going forward over the next 2 years. I am serving as Speaker of the House in Minnesota for the next 2 years. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and that's where my focus is.
And Speaker Demuth, with all due respect, that's a big non-answer on the governor's race.
Well, Esme, again, I won't be running for U.S. Senate. I have not made any decisions going forward other than getting us through this election.
Madam Speaker, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Esme.